I'm back in my loader, man. Look, let me spin around here. There's an 830 on the other side of my grapple. The 830 is running, and I'm not running it, so that means Derrick's back. Ah! Can you tell I'm excited? I'm more happy. I'm happier. Y'all listen, y'all that like my sayings. Here comes one. Get ready, because here it comes. All right, y'all ready? I'm happier than a puppy with 2 peckers. Just think about it. I'm not gonna repeat it. Think about it for a second. Just think about it. Think about it. You'll get it. You'll get it. But anyhow, Derrick's back. Derrick's about 3 weeks shy of being out for 5 months. He did come back and work for a day or two back in late January, or sometime in January, I believe it was, and he didn't make it. He had to end up having another surgery. But he's back today, so maybe he'll stay back. So this video is a story time video, and it's about attitude. Attitude. Last week I didn't have the best attitude. I don't like cutting. I can run the cutter. I learned a lot more about the cutter, the buncher, the track buncher. I can run a rubber tire cutter real good. That's what I did for a long time, was run a rubber tire. But the track buncher is so much different. But my attitude was not good last week. It sucked pretty bad, and it wasn't good. And I did some whining. I'm not gonna lie. I did some whining about the situation. But man, when you're cutting on this steep ground and you're on something you don't know a lot about and everything like that, it's not no fun. So the attitude thing kind of ties into my story time story here. This happened back in 1998, and we were working right here in Columbus, or just right outside of Columbus, cutting a 40-acre clear cut that was predominantly hardwood with a little bit of pine mix in it, and it was running about 4 loads to an acre. I was still running the buncher at the time and cutting down. Well, because during the summer, flat ground, real low area, if somebody squirted the dirt, when I say squirt the dirt, that means pee, for God's sakes, if you don't know what that is. If somebody squirted the dirt down in there, you'd bury up, you'd get stuck. It was some of that. It was what I call crawfish dirt. That white, chalky looking stuff, kind of, it's not lime, but it don't have no bottom to it. Your machine hits it with it wet, and it just goes to China. So we were working in there, and we got rained out, and Dad wanted us to go over there and wanted me to push the road off. Well, I knew it was a waste of time to go in there the next morning to push that road off. It was useless. I didn't want to go. My attitude sucked about it. So we went. I got up there. We had the 850 John Deere bulldozer at the time and everything. I hiked in there too. Everybody else stayed up there just off the road. I got on the bulldozer, pushed it off. It was just slop is all it was. I pushed what I thought I could and got off of it. And when we bought that bulldozer, we had Warrior. We come from Warrior. We had Warrior to put us a plate on top of the blade. It was about a 3x3 plate that was 1 inch thick, and it set flat on top of the blade. It had these big gussets that came back to the blade, and in the center of that plate, it had a hole in it for the kingpin of a trailer to sit in. So the way it was designed on that 410 loader we had with D-limber, you could drive up underneath that loader with it and put that kingpin right in that hole in that plate and move it anywhere you wanted to move it. Hang on, let me talk to you. What did you end up weighing a while ago, Herb?
90.
So anyhow, his scales ain't working. That plate was sticking out on the front of that blade. So when I got off the bulldozer, I did not have my hard hat on, and I walked around the front of that bulldozer, and somehow or another, I don't know if I caught a root or caught the toe behind my heel or the mud just got me messed up or what, but I tripped and I fell, and when I fell straight into that bulldozer, into that plate on that bulldozer blade. it knocked me out for just a little bit. And we'll take this one back off. It knocked, all right, go ahead there, I'll be fine. It knocked me out for just a little bit, but I wasn't out. I don't think I was out long. They didn't see it. Nobody saw it happen. I pushed up out of the mud. I went face first in the mud, so I had mud on my face. My arms were covered in mud. And of course, I didn't know. I knew I had hit my head, but I didn't know.
I believe you dynamite done got turned down.
I didn't know the severity of it, or how bad it really was. So I walked back to where Kevin and Derrick and Danny and all of them were at, and they saw I had mud all over me. They wanted to know what happened. And of course, I told them, I said I hit my head and I fell. And they said, well, let's look at it. Well, they picked the water jug up. Of course, I had blood everywhere too, but I didn't know I had blood on me. I couldn't feel it, you know. And they took the water jug and held it up over my head and poured water on it. And when I looked at Danny was about white as a ghost. So I knew that it was bad and everything. So anyhow, Danny said it's bad, man, you know, and I looking at everybody else, and I could tell that they didn't look right. So just by looking at them, and I told Danny, I said, and Derrick and all them, I said I'll just go find Mama and I'll get her to fix me up. And Danny said, no. He said, you're not driving anywhere. He said, come on, jump in your truck. He said, I'm gonna drive you to where you need to go. I was like, is it that bad? And Danny said, it's bad. Well, see, to me, I didn't realize it, but they could see my skull. Just standing there looking at me, they could see my skull, you know. So he got me to Mama right quick. Mama took me to emergency clinic, and I walked in there. I got a wet rag on top of my head holding it, and the doctor says, you know, well, let's look at it, you know, and everything. And I pull it down. He said, man, he said, you got that thing packed full of mud. He said, it did stop the bleeding, but he said, it's packed full of mud. He said, we got to clean all that out. And I'm like, really? He said, yeah, we're finna have to scrub it out. I said, scrub? He said, yeah. He said, we can't fix it up with it full of dirt. I was like, well, that makes sense, you know. So I got some kind of brush or something, I don't know, but that son of a gun started bleeding. I just knew I was dead, you know, and I was gonna die and all that, you know. I figured that was the end of me. But they got it all scrubbed out. All right, right there, Scott. This will be a load of Westerville. So they rather than stitching it up, they took and stapled that thing up, and they put, it was about a dozen staples that they put in there. Of course, I wore my hair real short like I got it now, and so I wore those staples for a week or so. I can't remember how long it was. Of course, they stuck out like a sore thumb. I mean, walking around looking like I had a freaking antenna hanging out of the top of my head, you know. And but so they fixed me up, and then they scared me to death, man. They started talking about head injuries and all the stuff like that, and I'm like, they said, well, that's what you got, it's a head injury. And I'm like, dang, man. They said, you know, when you can see your skull, you know, standing here looking at you can see your skull, you know. So we always wear hard hats. That day I did not have my hard hat on, and I just didn't. You know, we wasn't working or nothing like that, and I didn't put it on, and I paid the price for not wearing it that day. It's a wonder it didn't kill me, you know. But you know, I see these pictures of these guys on these Facebook logger sites that I post in all the time. Just tons and tons of pictures of these loggers, these guys working in the woods with no hard hats on. And I'm thinking, why not? You know, why not? Because, excuse me, I have hit my head several more times over the years since then, and had I not had that hard hat on, I'd have been in the exact same situation again. I'd have busted my head open again, but the hard hat has saved me. Now, if I'd had my hard hat on that day, I probably would have knocked myself silly, but I wouldn't have got a gash in the top of my head like I did, you know. And, but man, I mean, it's just, it makes sense to where the hard hats and stuff like that. But I mean, that could have been a really bad situation and all that. But it, you know, it worked out. It's just, you know, I didn't miss any work or anything. You know, I was right back at work, you know, the next day. But, and two, here's the other part, talking about the attitude. If I'd had a better attitude about it, it probably would have, because, you know, I didn't want to be there. You know, I did not want to be there. You know, I mean, it just one of those things. And a lot of times my attitude is not the best. I'll be the first to admit that. Just like last week when I had to get back on that 830 and run it, I will say, like I said earlier, I learned a lot more about that machine and the tricks on it, the things that you can make that machine do. I actually sunk it. I'm not talking about no little bit. I'm talking about like down to where the back end of it was even with the mud. And me and Chad got it out and never hooked to the machine. We were able to get it out. And it's just from where I learned some tricks on it as I was running it last week. But y'all just keep that in mind, man. Attitude plays a huge part in everything that you do, everything that we do every day. And sometimes the difference between getting it done and not getting it done or whatever is the difference between a crappy attitude and a good attitude. And, you know, part of my role doing what I do is to be the cheerleader out here on this job, to keep everybody pumped up and going and to cheer them on. But if I have a crappy attitude, man, it can bring everybody down. And that's what you don't want. So hope y'all enjoyed that. Yes, sir. Later.